A day of high tension in France. SWAT teams have cornered the suspects in the Islamic terrorist massacre from Paris last week.
A top leader from ISIS is warning there will be more attacks to come, not only in Europe, but America as well. Heather Sells has the story.
Some 1,500 police officers cornered the suspects early today in this printing house 30 miles from Paris with their hostage, as another hostage situation also unfolded in downtown Paris. The two brothers, Saeed and Sharif Kawachi, told police they wanted to die as martyrs. The two had been under surveillance by French police for years and were on a U.S. no-fly list. In early 2011, the older brother, Saeed, reportedly traveled to Yemen and trained with an al-Qaeda-affiliated group led by Anwar al-Awlaki, the U.S.-born Islamic preacher who was killed that same year in a CIA drone strike. Saeed's younger brother, Sharif, was arrested in 2008 for trying to join up with Islamic fighters in Iraq. While in prison, he reportedly shared a cell with a key al-Qaeda operative. The French-born sons of Algerian parents are the main suspects in Wednesday's shooting that killed 12 people at Charlie Hebdo, a newspaper that often made fun of Islam and its prophet Mohammed. In Paris and cities across France, people are gathering to pay tribute to those killed at the French magazine.
I'm an art student. We stress freedom when we study art. This attack is shocking. I wrote on the note that we must struggle for freedom from beginning to end.
Meanwhile, in a rare public speech, the head of British intelligence says that al-Qaeda in Syria is plotting large-scale public attacks on transport systems and famous targets in the West. His warning comes as European spy agencies worry about the increasing threat from homegrown jihadists, especially those returning from battlefields in Syria and Iraq. The numbers are alarming: 600 British, 550 German, and some 1,200 French citizens are believed to be fighting in Syria. The big concern is someday they'll return home to their European capitals even more radicalized and ready to kill. Hours after the massacre in Paris, the terror group known as ISIS, or Islamic State, hailed the two brothers as heroic jihadists. An ISIS cleric reportedly said his group was responsible for the attack, saying, "We started with a France operation for which we take responsibility. Tomorrow we'll be in Britain, America, and others." Heather Sells, CBN News.
Well, this is more evidence that Islam is not a religion of peace. It seems to spontaneously produce homicidal maniacs who want to come and kill people and kill them in the name of Allah and say, all we're doing is jihad, and we're somehow giving the faith responsible for this a pass. You keep hearing over and over again that Islam is a religion of peace. Well, if that's the case, why does Islam seem to produce this kind of radical terror? What's behind it? And just to say, well, this is some radical group or these are insane people, I don't think covers it, because at its fundamental core, it seems to want to produce this kind of thing. It's not isolated. It seems to be happening wherever there are Muslims. There seems to be this radicalization, and then it seems to lead to murder on a regular basis. The other thing here is, you know, we're looking at it as a free speech issue, and this is somehow trying to stop free speech, and these are radicals trying to do this. Here's a piece of information you may not have heard. The French Council of Muslim Faith and the Grand Mosque in both Paris and Lyon had unsuccessfully sued this same magazine to stop the publication. So they were trying legal means. When those failed, the offices of this magazine were firebombed, and now it's worldwide news. You've got 12 people dead in a massacre. There was an escalation. It started off with a lawsuit. It started off with protests. Then it turned to firebombing. The members of this publication were all under police protection. It did them no good. And at the end, what's so-called religion of peace seemed to want to stop whatever publication they were doing. If you want to find out more about Islam, we've got something for you. It's called Islam, Religion of Peace or War. Why is ISIS literally following the exact words of the Quran when they behead people? What is behind it? What are the verses that they're quoting? Why does it seem to be such a problem today? If you want to know more information, the booklet's free. We can send it to you right now if you want to download it on cbn.com, or you can just call us. We'll mail you a free copy of it. 1-800-759-0700. Well, in other news, the radical Islamic group Boko Haram has launched another major attack in Nigeria. John Jessup has that story from our CBN News Bureau in Washington. John?
Thanks, Gordon. Boko Haram reportedly has killed hundreds of people in a deadly assault, possibly up to 2,000 after overrunning a military base in northeast Nigeria. The BBC reports almost an entire town had been torched and that the bodies were left rotting in the streets. Boko Haram wants to establish an Islamic government in the northeast region of that country. Christian persecution is on the rise around the world, and radical Islam, according to a new report, is the driving force. CBN's George Thomas has that story.
From the Middle East to sub-Saharan Africa, Christians are enduring attacks for their faith like never before.
The persecution of Christians is real, it is horrifically violent often, and it is spreading at an unprecedented rate in modern times.
Dr. David Curry is president of Open Doors, a group that monitors religious freedom worldwide. He says Christians face the most persecution in 2014 than in any other year in recent history.
We have seen the sharpest jump in violent attacks against Christians in the modern era.
Open Doors reports that 4,344 Christians were killed for their faith in 2014, double the number in 2013.
These aren't Christians who are collateral damage in a larger war. These are people who are targeted because they choose to worship Jesus, because they want to read a Bible, and that's shocking.
On Wednesday, the group released its annual World Watch list, ranking the top 50 countries where Christians face the most persecution. North Korea topped the list once again for the 13th year in a row, with some 70,000 Christians reportedly languishing in prison camps.
The government has a paranoia about any ideology which they see as a threat to their cult worship of their leaders. And so they rank enemies of the state. Christians are the #1 enemy of the state in North Korea.
Rounding the top 10 worst violators are Somalia, Iraq, Syria, Afghanistan, Sudan, Iran, Pakistan, Eritrea, and Nigeria. But in a majority of the countries, Curry says elements of one religion above all poses the greatest threat to Christians.
Islamic extremism is a driving force, is really the driving force in 40 of the top 50 countries on the World Watch list.
The majority of the deaths last year happened in Nigeria, where kidnappings and murders by the Islamic group Boko Haram killed 2,484 Christians.
Nigeria needs prayers. Nigeria needs prayers.
Damaris Atson has experienced Boko Haram's wrath firsthand. In 2010, her husband was stabbed to death by the Islamic fighters. She said it has taken the grace of God to forgive her husband's killers.
If I do not forgive, the Lord will not forgive me. So I have to forgive, because Jesus teaches us to forgive one another.
Meanwhile, the terrorist group known as Islamic State, or ISIS, continues to drive hundreds of thousands of Christians from Syria and Iraq. Curry worries their success at targeting minority faiths is giving impetus to other radical groups to pursue similar tactics around the world.
So you have the Islamic State, their tactics, their methodology now being adopted by Boko Haram, by Al-Shabaab, and others. And so I think this means that while this year was the worst ever, things look very troubling for years to come.
Open Doors says the World Watch list is a wake-up call to the tragic suffering of Christians around the world.
We need to make the persecuted church an issue of prayer and of support because there's a genocide happening.
George Thomas, CBN News.
The music world has lost a legend. Gospel singer and songwriter Andraé Crouch died Thursday after being admitted to the hospital following a heart attack last weekend. Over the course of his career, Crouch worked with stars like Michael Jackson, Madonna, and Barbara Mandrell. He was also a frequent guest here on the 700 Club. Ephraim Graham has this look at his life, his ministry, and legacy.
Now is the day of salvation. My God speaks to every nation.
Andraé Crouch earned his position as the father of modern gospel with hits like Soon and Very Soon, Through It All, and Can't Nobody Do Me Like Jesus. It's a legendary career that began when the California native wrote his first hit at just 14, not long after overcoming a stuttering problem. It's a problem that started at 3, when he was nearly kidnapped outside his parents' dry cleaning business.
My folks saw him carrying me across the street because they heard me let out a yell, and the guy dropped me. And I remember then is when I started stuttering.
Andraé and his twin sister Sandra grew up singing in the church their parents started, and music proved to be the key to ending his stuttering.
My father, with the wisdom of my father, he said, Andraé, you never stutter when you sing. Why don't you act like you're singing when you answer a question? That's the way I started singing, and that's the way I got out of stuttering. So everything sounded like music.
Crouch called his music ability a miracle. He was a master on the piano without ever studying it or reading music. At just 11, his father called him to the front of the church, told him to play, and he did.
All night, all day, angels watching over me, my Lord.
An incredible career followed, from countless hits with his group Andraé Crouch and the Disciples, then 18 solo albums, 9 Grammy Awards, and an honorary Artist in Residence Award from Regent University's International Center of Worship. Still, at the height of his music career, Crouch slowed down on singing and began preaching. He joined his sister to pastor New Christ Memorial Church after they lost their mom and dad to cancer in 1992, and then their older brother a year later. It's a calling Pastor Andraé said God had to literally knock him down in the middle of worship to accept.
I heard his voice say, okay, Mr. Through It All, Mr. Soon and Very Soon, Mr. Take Me Back. You know, name songs. He said, you will not get up from this floor until you tell me yes.
His music career may have slowed down in the 90s, but he was inducted into the Gospel Music Hall of Fame in 1998. And he earned a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame in 2003.
So whenever anybody passes that and they say, who's Andraé Crouch? They said, well, he's thinking about Jesus Christ. That's the part that I'm grateful about.
And his music legacy will live on.
Take me back, dear Lord, to the place where I first received you.
And he did indeed leave us all with an amazing legacy. Music legend Andraé Crouch was 72. Gordon, my dad was a worship leader, and a lot of his songs were staples in the church when I was growing up.
Well, he's written the songbook for all of us. Most of the songs the church was singing in the 70s and 80s, Andraé Crouch was part of. He left an amazing legacy. And I love what he said. They'll pass by that star and they'll say, he sang about Jesus.
Welcome back to Washington for this CBN News Break. In Oklahoma today, a 10 Commandments monument is once again in place. Yesterday, workers used a crane to move an exact replica of the monument outside the Oklahoma Capitol where the original once stood. Last fall, a man destroyed it after driving his car into the monument. He was later admitted to a hospital for mental health treatment. Operation Blessing is bringing aid and comfort to victims of ISIS in the Middle East. Over 1 million people in Iraq and Syria have fled their homes to escape persecution and violence at the hands of the militant group. Iraqi Christians and other minorities are now living in refugee camps, relying on the generosity of others for basic necessities. Operation Blessing has distributed truckloads of critical supplies such as rice, noodles, tea, beans, and powdered milk, as well as stoves, blankets, and diapers. Teams also threw a party to cheer up children in those camps. Well, you can find out more about Operation Blessing by going to its website at ob.org.